Hey, g'day everyone. Okay, so this is a little video I've put together about my 4.5 pound Hytest Forged Tools Green axe, specifically a round pole. I thought I'd do this. I've sort of learnt a lot watching other people's videos about this sort of thing. So hopefully, sort of sharing a little bit of what I've gone through restoring and hanging and using this axe might help others, and it was kind of fun to put it together. And I'm by no means an expert in any of this stuff, in the axes, the hanging, or the chopping, but I'm keen to learn. I've really liked the axe community, the sort of camaraderie that people show, and the experiences and knowledge that gets shared around. So keen for any comments and tips on various parts of this video and the process that I show, because it all helps, and I'm happy to put it out there as well. Okay, so from what I've been able to work out from people who know a lot more about this sort of stuff than I do, is that after around a year of production of what was known as the Blue Hytest under the name of Plum Australia Proprietary Limited and Hytest Forged Tools, Hytest came out with a line of axes called the Green axe. There were round pole and square pole versions. The round pole version was produced between 1946 and 1951, and that's the type that I got. I think there's definitely like a 4.5, a 4 and a 5 pound version of this style of axe. I'm not sure if there's a 3.5, but it was a very popular axe. There are a lot of different styles of stamps for this one. So I picked my one up a year or so ago. It was in really good nick, bit rust covered, but otherwise no real damage anywhere. Nice clean sort of stamps and stuff, even though it hasn't got any sort of indications of poor usage. It looked like it had received quite a bit of use. It looks like quite a bit of the edge had gone from continued sharpening. It was about 35 degrees when I first got it, and it weighed just under 4 pound 5 ounces, so it's a little bit underweight, but I thought it was a really good example of this style of axe, so I was pretty happy to find it. So the first thing I did was just sort of clean it up with some steel wool and a bit of WD-40, and then hit it with a brass wire wheel, and that kind of got all the surface rust off, but left the patina pretty well intact, and it's in really good shape. I think this style with the larger lettering stamp, these are probably the last or late model green axe. So because there's other styles of stamps that have got Hytest Axe and Tool Company and Forged Tools and things, all sorts of different styles that I think came out before these ones. These are a bit more like the style of stamps you see on the Craftsman and Forester and Challenger line. So probably I'm going to say early 50s, so 50, 51, I reckon these one is when this one came out. So one of the last of the round pole green axes just before they switched to square pole in 1951, and that continued through until 57 when they switched over to the Craftsman Forester Challenger lines. So my plan was to hang this head on a 800mm 31-inch spotted gum handle. Picked up a Super Slash handle, Kruger's Super Slash handle, from a bloke in Ipswich who used to work at the Kruger's mill that was in Bundamba up until the 80s, I think he said. So kind of semi-vintage, kind of around the right vintage for this sort of axe. I figured they were a pretty good match. So after I'd cleaned up the head, the first thing to do was to re-profile the edge. So kind of took a compass, worked out the arc, marked it up, and then filed it back to give it a nice new crisp shape. And then it was a matter of starting to grind it. And I started out probably at that point, most of it was between 35 degrees. So I don't have a belt grinder or anything like that. I do it all by hand, primarily with files. So the first thing I did was just with a texter, mark up roughly where I thought the new grind should go and clamp it to the bench, and then start filing. So for all the bulk removal, I usually use a bastard file. I've got some vintage Wiltshire ones I got from my dad, and then a bunch of thirds that seem pretty good. And it's just a matter of sitting there and slowly working that grind down, working through the steel. This particular steel, I found it really nice to work. It's sort of soft enough, but it still takes a while for the file to bite. But as you're doing it, you sort of see it felt like, you know, it was going to end up being a nice grind, and I was pretty confident when I was done it would hold a nice edge. I don't know how many hours of this was needed, quite a bit. I find it quite cathartic, and it's nice to see the transformation. So this is kind of what it looks like after the bulk removal with the bastard file. After that, I sort of gradually work my way down with a second cut, and then right at the end a first cut to kind of smooth it off, and just keep going until that surface is nice and flat. And I was aiming for about a 20-degree grind, so that seems to be a good angle for this sort of axe and for the style of timber they were generally used on, which is hard Australian timbers like eucalyptus and stuff. So after I got the main grind down to, you know, around 20 degrees or so, it was then a matter of smoothing it off and adding a micro-bevel. I did most of the smoothing with a stone. Simply started out, I think, around 300 and then worked up to 1,000. And then once it's nice and flat and smooth, started at a micro-bevel initially with a little diamond file, going for about 25 degrees or something. And finishing that off with ceramic whetstones. I start with 1,000 after I've done the diamond, and then go to 3,000, and then eventually 8,000, and that gets it pretty sharp. So here's the little micro-bevel I managed to get. I try not to make them too big, but I think it's important to have one on there. Otherwise, that edge can be quite fragile. It just gives it a lot more strength for heavy impacts. So from this point, I would strop it with some fine abrasive and then just leather to kind of get it as sharp as I can. I still haven't completely mastered the ultimate razor sharp axe, but I feel like pretty close, and I think pretty close is going to be pretty good for the sort of chopping that I like to do. So here I am doing a bit of the old paper test, a few little tears and stuff, but it's sharp enough to do this, sharp enough to shave hairs off your arm or your legs, and I figure that's pretty good. So here it is after a bit of a strop and polish, looking pretty good, pretty clean, pretty sharp. Almost felt like it looks too clean at this point. I want to get some grind back on it, but in order to do that, I need to attach a handle. So the next step was going up back to the super slash and making a wedge so that I can hang it. So I don't have a bandsaw or anything fancy like that. I cut on my wedges by hand using my little Japanese joinery saw. For this one, I thought I'd give silver quandong a go, Elocarpus grandis. This is a southeast Australian rainforest hardwood. It's pretty soft. I think it's like dry on the Junker scale, about 2.8. which I thought would be good, trying to get something that's going to deform to the shape of the kerf. I was too nervous to record the actual banging in of the wedge. It went in pretty well. I just wasn't sure whether it actually was hard enough to push the spotted gum out at the top and sort of give it a good mushroom, but got it in there and cut it down, and this is the sort of fun moment of smoothing that off and adding some tongue oil. It's my favourite sort of oil to use, natural. Doesn't matter if you get it on your hands or not. Soaks in and polymerizes just like boiled linseed, and hopefully that'll hold that wedge in nicely. So then it was a matter of sorting out some kind of palm swell. I had a little bit of spalted river oak, Casuarina Cunninghamina, that I thought would be good for that. So cut 2 little sections of that off, flattened down the end of the old super slash spotted gum, clamped it on with some wood glue, left it overnight, and then started to shape it. And I think I got a bit carried away initially with the shaping. I kind of took off a little bit more than I wanted to, but had to kind of commit and follow through, and then thin down the rest of the handle. So once all the sanding and shaping was done, I finished it off with several coats of tongue oil, let that dry, gave it a bit of a sort of rub over to polish it up a little bit, and really happy with how it came out, other than the sort of smallish palm swell. I think it all looked really good at the end. Wedge looked nice contrast there between the silver quandong and the spotted gum, and also really nice contrast between the spotted gum and the river oak in the palm swell. I loved how that came out. So overall, a good hang, a lot of fun, all the little components there, and very satisfying to get to the point where it's ready to start to chop. But there was one last thing to do before that, and put the axe aside and start on a little sheath. So first I trace out the shape of the head to get all the various shapes and then transfer that onto leather. I use some 3.5mm veg tan shoulder strap for this one. It's nice and thick and sturdy. I think it works well. Punch my initials in case I forget who it belongs to. And then all the bits I glue together with a water-based leather glue. Made a little step there because it's quite a thick head. Clamp that together and leave it to set overnight. I use a dye for all my leathers. This one is London Tan. I like that colour when I'm not sure what colour to do it. Here's just getting spacing for all the stitching. Put some marks in. This stuff's way too thick to push through with a needle, so I pre-drill all the holes with an old drill press that my dad put together. It's quite the contraption, but it does the job. So then get the stitching in and burnish and seal all the edges, add some little press studs, and then condition the leather just with some saddle conditioner. And it came up really nicely. I like this colour and style. I've sort of worked out it's pretty important to have a sheath for an axe that you want to take places and travel with. Makes it so much safer and also keeps that edge clear of any damage. So here it is, all done. Nice little combo, good setup. And the only thing left to do after that is test it out. So while I was waiting for some green stuff, my arborist friend suggested I try this log out. It was a piece of something, he doesn't know what it was exactly, that he picked up in Victoria about 10 years, been sitting outside his house seasoning and getting hard. I don't know what I was thinking, agreeing to get this because this is rock solid, borderline semi-fossilized timber. I guess it was pretty good to try the axe out on. This is my first kind of go at doing a bit of underhand. Got a little setup in the yard there next to the guinea pigs. Still working on my technique. I'm a bit over the shoulder there, getting better, as you'll see later. And the axe is barely penetrating this stuff. It took about, I'm going to say, around an hour to get through it. I'm not going to include all that footage here, just a little bit of it to give you a sense of how hard this stuff was. At this point, the axe had been sort of left for a while, like, month or so, trying to let the wood settle and expand with oils and stuff in it. I thought that would be enough. I didn't use any glue or anything with the wedge, going old school, thought I'd try that. And also just keen to see how the silver quandong did. It's always interesting at this point to see how well you've done everything. It's quite the test, and this was definitely the wood to test it on, I can tell you. So enjoying me struggling with this very hard piece of mystery hardwood from Victoria. would have a break and get back into it. So, caught my breath. It's bloody hardwood. I don't know what it is. I think it might be some kind of acacia from the bloke who gave it to me, but I don't know. Anyway, axe is holding up pretty well. Little bit of movement on the wedge. I didn't use any glue, just oiled it with tongue oil. So I'll see how it goes. Maybe just got to push it back in a bit, but otherwise it's good. It's holding up against some really solid timber. Okay. Tidy it up. So quite a bit of slippage on the wedge there. Not bad, I mean it can go back in, but it's a bit of a bugger. I've left it for probably about 4 or 5 weeks to kind of set, but maybe it needs longer. I'm going to pop that back in and then come back. So push the wedge back in, reluctantly use a little bit of glue to hopefully hold it in. Sanded it down, smoothed it off, looks good. I think overall probably could have been a little bit prouder of the eye there, a bit more mushrooming might have helped. But after I did that, it seemed pretty solid, as you're about to see during the next stage of testing. So a few weeks later, I finally got my hands on some green hardwood from my arborist friend who took a tree down on the other side of town, let me know about it, and I went and collected it. So this is a piece of grey gum, Eucalyptus from Quinqua or Damber in Yugra. It hits pretty hard too, but when it's green, it's so much better than that piece of concrete that I was hammering into before. So kind of getting a bit more professional down here in my wood chopping arena in the backyard. Using my adze to flatten off the top of the log, so I got a better platform to stand on, because I realised I was sort of standing a little bit too square before, and my feet were sort of not really aligned with my swing. So hopefully this will help me get my technique worked out. And it was fun to sort of use the adze. I hadn't used it before, so it's another sort of test run of something. This is a number 3 Robert Sorby adze. I think it's probably around the turn of the century. Picked it up a while ago, put it on a little cattle dog spotted gum handle, sharpened it up, and it worked really nicely, just to take off that outer bark and a little bit of the sapwood on the outside. Here's the adze, in really good nick, this one. I've got a number 2 and a number 1. I'm sort of keen to try those as well. The 3 is quite curved. I don't know exactly how different it'll be to use compared to the other ones, but it was fun to give it a go on this piece of wood. So even though this is quite hard, I think it's about 9 on the Junker scale, even green, so much nicer to chop into with this little axe. It's kind of doing its thing here, digging in, cutting in pretty deeply, and those nice convex cheeks are sort of really pushing into either side of the cut to sort of fracture the wood along the grain and push the chips out. Got some decent chips going here. And my feet are much better than they were before, partly helped by having a flat surface to balance on. And it felt really good. It's a fun point to get to after all the work of putting a little axe like this together, to reuse it, know you've got everything right and that it works as it should. It's what it's all about for me, actually getting to use these things again. I was loving it. So this one doesn't take nearly as long as the fence post I was working on before.